In the history of USA Wrestling, there has never been a time where we have had more high school talent at the same time. So you're going to have your Kerry Colotts. I'm not saying they didn't exist. You're going to have your Dave Schultzes. You're going to have your Ben Askrens. But to have this many studs at the same time, it would be wildly difficult for you to tell me, if you can have anybody, that's out there right now, who you would take. Now, popular opinion is going to say Bo Basset. What Bo has done with social media and embracing that, not to mention he's a performer. I mean, Bo does come through a camera very, very likable. And all the stuff you like about him, none of it is stuff you want to do. It's too hard. He can take getting up at 4 a.m. and training and then doing a sauna before school, and he can make it fun. That's a very difficult skill that not very many people have. But is he the best? No. No, the answer would be no. And go take a look at Jax. For me to explain to you some of the people that Jax beat, for me to explain to you the final wrestle-off at the final wrestle-offs to get into the Olympic trials, Jax versus Tomasello. It would be difficult for me to really explain what you saw there. Now, Jax couldn't get his credit. And last year, because there was another high school kid named Lindenall, who, by the way, is the age group world champion. So you have the best guy on earth against Jax. Now, I could tell you they had a 7-7 match and it went to criteria. I could tell you all of those things, but ultimately it went to Lindenall. So now Jax, how do you say he's the best? He wasn't even the best in the country. He wasn't even the best in the weight class at his time. Well, but it's a hard one because it might be Jax. It might be. Even if you're factoring that he wasn't the guy getting the nod or the guy with more points, when you factor that he's a year younger, it's a tough one. He might be. He might have gone further at the Olympic trials than anybody, but again, you had this damn Lindenall, who, by the way, is undefeated, ranked number 1 in the Division Ones right now, is a true freshman. It's one of these things where it's very hard to quantify. And before you start getting amazed and go, wow, those guys are still in high school? Wow. I haven't got to the top guy yet. That's Baze. Spencer Lee got upset by a guy named Ramos. Semifinals of the NCAA championships in Oklahoma. Ramos, the following year in the opening tournament, runs into a high school kid named Baze. Baze won. So now Baze beat the guy who beat the guy and is still in high school. And this story's a year ago. Baze is still in high school now. Came through the Olympic trials. This is off the top of my head. Austin. Fix. Nashawn took them all out. Took them all out. Gave the champion of the world a scare. And ultimately lost by 1 point, and that was the match to Vito. And he had 2 of them in one day. I believe they were both 1 point. One of them might have been head-to-head criteria. It's as close as you could possibly get. He is the best high school wrestler in the country right now. And there's just never been a time that we've had this. And I'm open to hearing what you're going to say, but you need to be open back. There's an entire segment of our population, anybody 40 years old or younger, and it's more like 50 years old and on anybody. If you try to come through America and talk about how great you are, that conversation is going to turn to how did you do in Fargo? And when you reveal you didn't go to Fargo, you're not going to win the argument. And all pound for pound, all legacy, all great is a popularity contest. It's a conversation amongst guys debating. But when we have a bunch of guys that don't go to the true national championship, which is Fargo, And they try to tell you, man, I was at Who's Number One. I was Beast of the East. I was Super 32. Do whatever you want with that. I know there is an age group, 25, 28 years old, that might hear you out on that. But there is an entire portion of our population that will not. It's not a second or third. It's one tournament, and it's Fargo. So these top guys that don't even go to Fargo don't have the ability to ever reclaim a top spot as best high schooler ever. They just be guys like me. They'll be voted out. I'll stop you right. I don't need to hear any more. I don't need to hear you were at the World Championships. I don't want to hear you were at the training center. I don't want to hear what you were doing. If you were not in Fargo over the summer, you are not the best. And whoever won Fargo is. All right, great. Now that's debatable with certain age groups. Anyone, 40 or up, anyone. You'd ask Dan Gable himself, anybody. Except for some of the newer guys will tell you that I'm right on that. And so what do you want to do? How do you find out? Why aren't they there? What restrictions are there? And history would say these guys, it's not going to end well. History. Because I could point to some real high school stars, and maybe not as good as these three that I just mentioned, but I could point to some real stars. And of all of those stars, two panned out. Dave Schultz and Kerry Kolot. Of any of the other high school stars, the untouchable, they couldn't do it at the next level. And the problem with using history here, let me stay with Bo Basset specifically because that's the name that you guys know. History says it doesn't work out for Bo in college. History says there are no world or Olympic teams in his future, but there's also not an NCAA championship. It's tough to use history when you're dealing with Bo because Bo is wrestling the older guys now. Like a conversation and a debate of how would Bo do with the older guys once he becomes an older guy isn't quite what we're looking at. We already know how Bo does with freshman and sophomore Division I college guys now. He beats them. So most guys, they got to get better, they got to get stronger, they got to get to that next level. Well, not necessarily on Bo. If he was to run sideways right now, run absolutely sideways, and in order to do that, he's going to have to pick up a drinking habit, which a lot of them do. He's going to have to pick up a girlfriend habit, which a lot of them do. And he's going to have to deal with an injury. Now, in college sports, that's the big three. You will not come back from that. You get a guy, the first time he gets a little something on his lily and he can't see any different, he's gone. You get a guy that gets into the booze and the partying because his folks were a little too hard on him and he finally got out of the house, he is gone. He is not coming back. You get a guy with an injury, particularly to your knee. At that weight range in wrestling, it's over. It's over. So, if that happened, if Bo got an injury, if Bo got a girlfriend, if Bo found a party and he liked it, so he runs sideways, right? He runs sideways. He's going to get a little bit better, just good maturity, going to get a little bit better just being in the room and seeing these things. He's an All-American. That's as of right now. So I don't know that history applies to Bo Basset. I think he's an exception, and I think he's exceptional. But if you could have anybody in the country right now, that is not the one that you choose. Bo would be third. Jax would be second. Your top recruit is Bays.